Welcome back to another episode of Houses and Spouses.
Today, we're interviewing our good friends Chris and Julie, and they're sure to have a lot of great advice, as Chris, on top of his regular career, is also a licensed inspector.
Yeah, and they also did a bunch of home renovations themselves. The home that they bought needed a bunch of upgrades, so they have some personal experience working with contractors.
Let's see what they have to say.
Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Anya.
Together, we bought a house in Austin, Texas.
And it's changed our lives.
I discovered a passion for real estate and embarked on a new career as a realtor.
And I fell in love with interior design and home improvement projects.
Now, we're on a mission to share the home ownership experience.
By hearing other couples talk about the ups, the downs, and everything in between.
This is Houses and Spouses. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We're going to ask you guys a few questions about, I know you guys bought your house a few years ago, but we want to hear about that process. So what went into you guys deciding to buy a new house?
So probably started, so I'm a physician, and so I was in residency and I lived near the medical center. And once we started to have, we had our second kid, and he was almost done with his training at the Health Science Center, the Med Center, we knew we wanted more space. And so we started looking a little bit north of San Antonio. So we had already owned I had owned my first house, and then he moved in with me. And then we knew we wanted to buy a house together with more space for the kiddos, and would also be where we could get to work fairly easy and those types of things. And so that's kind of where it led us to picking this area. But we had to
spread.
Space.
Yeah, we had to
more
spread
space.
out, both in the house and the yard.
Yeah, we were in a tiny townhome. So,
What's the layout like now of the house?
ooh,
So the house now is a 1, 2, 4 bedroom, 3.5 bath.
mm-hmm. 3,400 square feet.
And then we have the 50 by 60 shop with apartment. And then she has a little casita in the backyard as well.
That's great. A little she shed.
2.25 acres.
A little over,
2.3
acres. We're 10 minutes from 1604 and I-10. So it's super easy to get to work for Julie and to shopping and restaurants and all that.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And you guys have 3 kids now, and is it enough house for the big family?
No, I can't hide.
That's where the shop is there now. So he has his own space.
And we had to put in an apartment with, full bathroom and everything so I could get away.
Yeah.
No, we have a dedicated playroom and a formal dining that we never use. A guest room, but this past year, the guest room was converted to a schoolroom for virtual learning. And that was pretty easy. We just built a Murphy bed so it can go either way. Then the kids' rooms are upstairs, so they're as far away from us as possible.
Well, the layout of the upstairs was interesting because the couple before us had bought the house when their kids were already out of the house. And so there was one large bedroom, just much bigger than a normal bedroom without a closet or anything.
Yeah, it was 25 by 30.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be considered a bedroom because it didn't have a closet.
So the first thing we did is figured we had 2 boys. So we had just had Grayson 6 months before we bought the house, our second. And I knew I wanted a third. He was still debating on the third. So
I still don't want a third.
We knew that we wanted to make sure that was an actual bedroom. So we had the space. So we ended up adding a closet to make it. So the upstairs is kind of interesting because there's a ginormous bedroom that the boys share. And then a smaller room that Brooklyn has, and then a small bathroom at the end of the hall. So it's enough space we're very blessed with lots of space. Well, yes, it is a full bathroom, but a dedicated play space that's kind of closed off. We don't have that. We just converted one of the formal dining areas or formal living areas into an open space, which is fine now when they're little. But part of the reason for the shop too was to give the kids a place to go down and hang out with dad. So we could use more room space, but we have lots of room. So definitely, and we have a lot of outside space, and so that makes up for a lot of if they don't have a certain space indoors, if they want, they're usually outside anyways.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about how the process of when you actually bought the house, finding the house.
So we looked when we were still in the med center, we had looked for about 6 months, and we found a place in Fair Oaks that we had really considered buying, and for some reason just didn't pull the trigger. And it sold, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later.
Mhm.
And that house, and so we just called off the search altogether.
Well, we were also pregnant with Grayson, or we were trying to get, no, we were pregnant with Grayson. So we knew we had a baby coming up. And so we wanted to take a break from trying to buy a house when we knew that we had a kiddo coming up. So we'd kind of searched the fall of 2016 and then got pregnant with Grayson. He was born in May 2017. So we kind of took a break in between that kind of time chunk.
But when we resumed after having Grayson, we went back to that same house or looked at that same area, and that house had sold again for
about
like
$80,000 or $90,000 more in just a year. So we were like, okay, we're gonna find a house now. This is the time to do it. And so we started looking again.
We looked at a couple houses, actually 2 houses on this street that we live on. And our real estate guy was really smart. He knew Julie wanted a sunset view. And so he kind of surprised us with this house.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't tell us about it until we'd finished with the others, came up right at sunset.
Oh,
And when you pull up into our driveway,
And you just look
y'all
out.
have been here. Like you look out and it's just like the sky is on fire. It was perfect. Before we walked in, Julie was like, okay.
Fun. And then
We're done.
And then we have a 2-story living space, which is how I grew up, like the main living space. It's really tall. And so we walked into that. So between the sunset view and that, and there was a Harry Potter closet under the stairs that our son immediately ran into and claimed as his room.
nice.
Between those 3 things.
No,
Now
what
it was
sold?
really hard because it was very out. I mean, it had like the tile floor inlay with like fake laminate, yellow laminate colors and that like pink wallpaper in the back. I mean, it was very outdated. So it was kind of hard in my mind because it's like, we're going to buy this house, but we're going to probably use most of our budget buying the house. And then we're going to have to live in this space that doesn't necessarily look exactly what, but has a lot of the features we want, just not
Right.
what the inside should look like.
So you guys you guys did do some renovations, Chris, you had mentioned to me that after the inspection report, you guys found some problems with the house that you had to look.
The inspection was pretty thorough. And he found some stuff there was one spot on the roof that needed to be replaced. And again, we actually know the previous owner. He's a really good guy. And they took care of everything that we asked for that was on the inspection report.
Good.
And then my parents gifted us some money to either renovate.
It was just the floors. We were just going to redo
we were going to do the bathroom or the kitchen.
Hmm.
And there was a small wet bar kind of offset to the living room. And we knew we didn't want that. But when we pulled that out, we found a lot of plumbing repair from pinhole leaks and copper.
Oh,
Which is traditional or not unexpected on a well property.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have pinhole leaks, you have 2 choices. One, you put a Band-Aid on it and just know in the future you're going to have leaks that you don't notice. And that's the problem with pinhole leaks is they're so small.
Mhm.
They're always in the wall. You don't know until 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years later when you have mold growing everywhere.
oh wow.
Instead of put a Band-Aid, we just pulled the trigger and replumbed the entire house.
Well, that was part of it, but also as we pulled up the floor in the
Oh,
bathroom
that's right.
and turned on the water, we found the pipe under the floor, kind of in the foundation here. And we turned it on, and all of a sudden, the drywall on this wall behind us started getting wet. So it was leaking all the way across. So between that and this, the master plumber is like, you just
have
need
to
to fix
do
it. So we started pulling stuff up, and that's where our budget went completely.
Our budget went from like 20 or 30,000 to 3
a
or 4
lot.
times that.
Yeah, a lot.
Jeez.
Wow.
But I'm glad we did it. And we had an amazing previous owner who came back and he's like, hey, y'all, we would have never said, because it was something like $24,000 to replumb everything.
Right.
He came and gave us half of that. He was like, I
Oh,
feel
wow.
bad.
How generous.
That, yeah, he sent us 12. Now he didn't tell his wife about all of it, but he ended up putting half it back in because he felt bad that, he knew some of the repairs. He didn't really probably understand them the way that, Chris was explaining it. but he knew, okay, there's probably some plumbing. He didn't realize it was going to have to be completely replumbed.
Oh, I
And
see.
so we just lucked out really with an awesome previous owner, very respectable guy. So.
Good. That's quite a story. Chris, is this what inspired you to get your inspector license?
No. So my dad and I I grew up doing construction with my dad. He was a shop teacher. And then on the weekends, we'd go build houses or decks or whatever. So I'm very familiar with it. And being around our house, and then my parents bought the property next door and renovating that really got me into it, because you see some terrible building practices.
Okay.
And I had enough of a foundation of knowledge. I was like, well, why don't I get paid to do this? And it, with that background, I'm a much better inspector. But in the state of Texas, it makes it a lot harder, because inspectors are only able to document certain things. And, if an outlet isn't working, an inspector will document that. The construction side of me wants to take off the cover and find out, is there just a loose wire? Is this an old outlet, or is there like a whole
He wants to fix all the problems, basically.
An inspector is not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So on an inspection report, all I can say is this outlet right here is not working at the time of inspection. I recommend having an electrician come in and evaluate. And it's tough, because a lot of people, when they're buying a home, that either A, scares them away, or B, they just see the cost adding up. Because if I come in and see one outlet isn't working, one sink has low pressure, there's a dark stain on an interior wall that was probably from a kid, now I've recommended a master electrician, a master plumber, and a master mold remediator.
Okay.
And it could have just been a loose wire, a stopped up sink, and a stain on the wall. So it could have been a $5 fix, or you can hire person after person after person and have $1,000 of consultation fees.
Okay. So then when you're working with people, Chris, like in your profession now as a home inspector, what side of it are you seeing? You're talking to the realtors that you're working with and the homeowners, correct? Like,
yeah.
So
my responsibility, my client is the homeowners.
Right.
So if y'all came, I still give you my report. Oh God, this is going to go on the internet. I do not document anything I'm not supposed to, but I'm also a very honest and forthright guy. And I will tell you, if this were a house I was considering buying, here are my big ticket items that I would absolutely invest in inspecting. Here are some other things that are technically deficiencies, so they're going to be on the report. I don't think it's that big of a deal. A good example is blinds, like the little blinds you pull up and down in the window. Frequently, homeowners install those themselves. And when you pull on the cord, the whole blind comes crashing down. Now, when that happens, there's almost always a crack at the corner of the window seal, or at the top of the windowsill. That is technically a sign of foundational shift or structural movement. Most of the time, those cracks are because you have dumb homeowners who don't know how to install blinds. So I will mark on the report possible evidence of structural movement or foundational issues. I will tell you in person as a homeowner, this was probably a poor blind install. Do not spend 15 grand having someone come in here and evaluate it.
That's a really good piece of advice. What other things would you advise future homeowners or current homeowners to look out for when they have an inspection?
Everything.
No, I would
That's a
say,
loaded question.
the biggest thing I know every realtor does is the home warranty. And I don't know if we just lucked out on the one that we had, but we used it on the AC that broke in here almost right away. Maybe a couple months in, and the AC stopped working. And they came out and, we paid $500 for $6,000 to $7,000 repair. So right off the bat, the $800 a month. So we still have it, and we're going on our 4th year. And we've used it almost every year on something that was original to the house. that maybe we didn't know was already broken right away, or that has eventually just broken. And so
Right.
I would also say home warranty
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And make sure you read the contract, because like some of our well stuff doesn't. So the pump is covered, but the piping is not covered. So if, if something blocks the well pipe, we still have to pay for them to pull it all up and stuff. So
And ours is awesome because there's no access to it. So to replace our well pipe, if that needs to happen, they have to fly in a helicopter and come straight above.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
Wow.
There's never been a cheap helicopter construction merging.
combination. Yes.
I don't imagine.
But to answer your question more specifically, it depends so much on the easiest way to do it. And I know we have one on our website, but you break it down by the age of the home. For instance, if you're looking at a 1950s or 60s house, electrical and asbestos are a much bigger deal, obviously, than a house than the 90s.
Right.
If you're looking at a 90s tract home, you have to look a lot more in the attic for just the proper fastener use and different things, the type of roof shingle that they used at the time, and then all the way up to your new builds. New builds, if you're selling one of those and the client buys it or looks to buy it early enough, they should absolutely go during every phase of the inspection. And you can actually hire an inspector aside from the city. You can hire your own personal inspector to go in for $100 or $200 and check, like, is this framing done appropriately? Is this electrical done to code? Because inspectors
Throughout the process of the new build.
correct.
Okay.
Because it's super easy to walk into a fresh, brand new home and be like, it's perfect. There are no issues.
They're going to have done everything right.
But being in construction my entire life, I've never met a crew that does everything correctly unless they're on TV and there's cameras around all the time.
Right.
Like there's the proper clips and spacing to use. Now, it's a pain in the butt to do that for electrical, for plumbing, but it's like that for a reason. And so if they are supposed to put it on every 2x4, but they skip and do every other one.
So then at what stage would you recommend that? You said the electrical, after the electrical's been done?
I would do framing. I would do pre-drywall, electrical, plumbing.
Okay.
Absolutely.
For a new
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good advice.
I mean, and you can probably tell them more. The other thing that we've seen are these flipped homes.
Oh my God.
So that's the one I would definitely caution buyers to have an inspector that does a really, really good job on a flipped home, because he's had more stories of people who say they can flip homes. And I just remember one where one of his coworkers, he turned on the bathtub and just went outside, and you could just see that water was just coming down the back wall.
Oh,
So
wow.
his plumbing wasn't hooked back up.
They didn't
when they
hook up,
replaced it.
yeah.
When they replaced
They
it,
put
they
in a
didn't
new tub, but they didn't hook up
it
the
up.
drain.
And that's why, so our neighbors down the other house we looked at on our street, the first thing they did, they had redone it all. After we had passed that one up, we bought this one September 2017. The owners came in, did some stuff in like October, and our neighbors bought it around December. They turned on the upstairs bathtub, and the pipes weren't connected. So they basically flooded their laundry room and their garage. Oh no, their living room or their dining room and their laundry room in the garage, because they just didn't hook up the piping properly. And so we're not sure who did the rebuild. Was it the owners or was it someone else? But just being cautious about who.
Well, there's no way for a buyer to know.
But,
So my advice is whoever they pick or the agent picks for their inspector, make sure that person has ample experience in that area with flipped homes.
Yeah.
Right.
Because flipping a $500,000 house compared to a $100,000 house or whatever those numbers are, there's different levels of quality. There's a difference between like a show and go by Zillow and Joe Bob, who lives down the street and wants to fix up his mom's house and make a little extra money.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
Find someone who has experience.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I want to ask you guys, like, what has changed since you bought the house? You've had another kid, and your family's grown. and you guys have done some upgrades to the house. Is there any sort of like advice like you would give somebody between like where you were then and where you are now, you know, about like buying a house and like growing your family and looking forward towards the future and all those sort of things in terms of how it's grown your relationship, and just talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
Buy a steam shower.
Yeah, I will say.
It helps you make babies.
Love your honesty.
No, reproductive rights.
Yeah.
I
I do like the steam shower though. I do recommend if you can put a steam shower, you should. Because I mean, especially in Texas where allergies are terrible, and we stick our kids in there with us, and everything decongests, which is
and
great.
it sounds expensive. It's not.
It's not. And the company that did ours has been great on the 2 times that we needed to like replace something small or it wasn't working. They're phenomenal.
I would say my biggest thing is location and land.
Yeah.
You can all like no matter what stage of life you're in, you're always going to need to transition. Like right now we have a playroom that is filled with toys for a 2-year-old to a 7-year-old. But even our 7-year-old is, plays outside or on his iPad more and doesn't play with all that stuff. Here in 10 years, that'll probably be more like a media room or something.
Like
Right. It's always sort of like, yeah, absolutely. The kids are growing older. They have new interests. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can do those kind of things throughout your life. You don't have to do them all at once.
When you can build a little shop or a little casita, an extra room fairly easily
Right.
on, you have the space to do it.
I've been trying to buy more land around us, and it's just so hard.
Yeah.
Right.
You buy a space, and that's what you got.
Yeah.
So make sure you like the area. You look at the schools and all that stuff.
And we really lucked out with neighbors. Like we moved into a kind of the properties are further apart. So I have a lot of people that live in the closer neighborhoods where there are, block parties and stuff. We lucked out there, but it's also good to kind of get an idea of, the age group as well around you to make sure that people are in the same stage of life as you are. And because there's older neighborhoods, like our old neighborhood had some young people, but they were very transitional in the med centers. So they were in for a couple years and out. Everyone else there was older population. So even if we tried to stay there, we wouldn't have had a ton of close friends in the neighborhood. Whereas out here, we're a little bit different age group and stuff, and our in-laws live next door, so definitely a bonus. But knowing the area as well, or that easy access, because your friends, obviously, you two know having a friend nearby is a big deal.
Right.
Or being able to get somewhere fairly easy is a big deal. But he's right on the space, plan ahead. Just expect that even if you have 2 kids, you might want a third. And if you don't end up having a third, then you have the extra room for it. But always like one step above what you're thinking. Plan for it. Well, eventually like a movie theater or something. Like if you have the extra
plan
space.
for movie theaters, not for children.
That's the takeaway for today.
Takeaway. I love it.
Well, thank you guys for sharing your wisdom with us.
Well, I don't have any wisdom.
Yeah.
It sounds like you guys learned a lot of important lessons, but even though there were certain bumps to navigate along the road, it sounds like you did a lot of things right and ended up with what seems to be a dream home.
It is. Yeah. No, it was a long road. I mean, that's
It's not
not
Like, yeah.
This house is me. We just got back from Costa Rica, and it was still like woke up and we saw the sunrise because that side has the sunrise, that has the sunset.
Yeah.
So I wake up every morning, still get a beautiful view. But the renovation process was hard, and like I said, construction is difficult. And even with people who know what they're doing, he was in middle school. We had a second kid, so he couldn't be out here the whole way. And contractors we went through 2 or 3. And had some issues. So that would be the other big advice. If you're planning on renovating, make sure and don't just read
Reviews.
You have to meet people who've worked with the person you're hiring.
And get references.
Yeah, get true references.
Clients.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the finished product, even though we continue to come up with projects to add to our list, it's been great. It's been perfect.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you guys doing this.
Yeah, this was really illuminating. I'm sure our viewers will appreciate all your advice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yay.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you to Chris and Julie for joining us today.
Yes, lots of good advice. What do you think is the big takeaway?
Maybe don't have that third kid.
Or install that steam shower.
Exactly. But jokes aside, I felt like Chris had some great expert advice as a home inspector, that the home inspection report that you get when you're buying a house only applies to that slice in time.
That's right. And also, when you do get that inspection report, those problems might not end up being a big bill. And do your research for your contractors.
Right. And get a home warranty. I felt like that was a good one.
Yep. We hope you enjoyed these tips. Please like and subscribe to watch our future episodes.
And if you want to be featured in an upcoming episode, you can reach out to us at houses.spouses@gmail.com.
See you next time.